Welcome to the first quarterly ethics review brought to you by the Institute for Enterprise Ethics at the Daniels College of Business here on the University of Denver campus. In this first review, we're going to talk about the scandal resulting from the General Motors ignition switch recalls. We're going to talk about the patient waiting list issue from the Veterans Administration. We're going to talk about the effects of high income and wealth disparity on the social fabric of our country. And then we're going to wind up with some rapid fire, quick hit responses to some other issues. Cindy, the Veterans Administration patient waitlist scandal cost General Shinseki his job, and it certainly cost thousands of veterans untold pain, both physically and psychologically. What caused this? Was this simply another governmental bureaucratic foul-up, or was there something more sinister below it?
That's a good question, Dan. It's actually, I think, a little bit of both. On the bureaucratic side, there's no doubt that we're talking about a very large public sector organization. There is a lot of people, there's a lot of bureaucracy and process. In the Clinton administration, President Clinton appointed someone who came in and cleared house and streamlined practices and got the VA operating very effectively, but as of late, those advancements have seemed to decline. It is very much part of the history of this organization, though, that there are troubles here. Back in 1921, when the President Harding appointed the first director of the VA, the story goes that somebody came into the White House and found President Harding with his hands around the director's throat, trying to choke him to death because he had been accepting bribes and was a corrupt leader. So this is part of the history of this organization. In a bureaucratic organization, a public sector organization, accountability just isn't the same as it can be in a private sector organization. And that accountability is lacking for two very good reasons. One reason is the civil service system, which regulates who can be hired into the system, and more than that, regulates who can be exited from the system. It becomes very difficult to discipline or terminate an employee in the public sector. On the other hand, who are the people who are non-civil servants in the government? They're the political appointees. And what happens with the political appointees? Well, they come and go as the administration changes. So we have people on the bottom of the organization that can't be held accountable, and we have people at the top of the organization that can't be held accountable. And so it does become a difficult situation. Don McCubbery and I studied this a bit here in the state of Colorado as we investigated the problems in enacting some IT system changes, and they were complete and utter failures. And we asked that same question: would this have happened in the private sector, or is it the lack of accountability in the public sector? So I think the bureaucracy helps us understand that. But there's also no doubt whatsoever that there's a corrosive culture. In fact, that's the term that's being used now to describe the culture. It's corrosive, that there's a lot of finger pointing and blaming, and bad news doesn't go forward, it's suppressed. I read that fully 25% of all federal whistleblowing cases that are being heard right now come from the VA. So it appears as if there are some serious cultural issues. On top of that, they had been using a metric to measure performance and also give bonuses to their employees. And this metric becomes the heart of this case. It's the metric that all patients would need to be seen within 14 days. Unfortunately, the software could be gamed, and it was. The employees would wipe it out and put in a different date, which actually advanced the system another 14 days. And this is what resulted in the long waits. And so at the same time, these veterans are not receiving the care they deserve. The people who are doing this are receiving bonuses for their excellent performance. It's ironic.
Yeah. Yes. John?
Yes, Cindy, you talk about the whistleblowing cases. Reportedly, a lot of those whistleblowers also were the victims of retaliation, I guess consistent with the corrosive culture that you mentioned. How do we correct that kind of culture of retaliation? Is there any way to get a grip on that, absent perhaps just privatizing the whole thing and giving up and giving the veterans vouchers to go out and get quality care in the private sector?
You know, that's a tempting solution, John, but it actually brings up a very interesting point in this case, which is that once a veteran receives care, he or she reports an 80% satisfaction level with the care he or she has received. So as one veteran put it, either we get seen in 30 days and get cured, or we die because we haven't been seen. So the subsequent care is great. It's just the access to the care that seems to be broken in this point. And so do we blow up everything because one piece of it is broken, or do we try to fix the broken piece? That's a very important question. Overall, though, the issue of can you change a culture in this kind of situation is really a difficult question. You might ask yourself, what would happen in the private sector? Well, Mary Barra fired a number of people. Can people be fired in this situation? I thought one of the most outrageous things here was that supervisors were training new hires on how to fudge the system. And so when you have something that's as broken as that, I think it'd be awfully hard to fix it. The government has produced a report about what are the problems and what should be fixed. And I think they know the problems, but the fixes they suggest are pretty weak.
Cindy, I would suggest that the veteran is more important than the system that serves them, right? It would appear to me that if the Veterans Administration fundamentally is not able to handle the veteran load that it has responsibility for, that the agency would permit itself to give the veteran the opportunity to take their medical care somewhere else if they couldn't satisfy that need within some specified time frame, like 14 days or 30 days. That way, the veteran would at least have an opportunity to be seen, and as we know, what gets measured is what gets done, and if you're not doing it, you're going to fudge it. That takes away the fudge factor. I know the solutions are hard, but I think it can be managed with good leadership, and I appreciate the summary that you gave us on that issue. Thank you.
You know, the situation is really a sad one because we're talking about people that have served our country without question and have received such an inappropriate response to that. And you might wonder if this would be the case if we were talking about health care access for members of Congress or their families. You know, back a few years ago when Denver International Airport opened, they had a very famous problem with the baggage system. And the mayor shut down the airport and said, we are not opening this until this system is fixed. And they spent a great deal of money to get that system fixed.
Right.
Why can't we get systems for the disadvantaged fixed? Is it because they don't have the same voice? I think that's a question we have to ask.
Great, thank you.
That's a substantial point to finish this conversation on. Thank you very much.